Okay, let's talk about economic resources and systems. So I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. As quickly as I can anyway, I guess. So we're going to talk about the different ideas of the things that go into production, productive resources or factors of production. First one, land, natural resources, so anything that is on or on the surface of the earth or underneath in the earth. Asteroids would count when they obviously hit the ground. I don't think we were mining asteroids yet that haven't hit the ground. But those are all the natural resources, things that grow, things that have been there, decayed, stuff like plants and oil and minerals and all those kinds of things. And the next group is labor. So that includes both physical labor and mental labor and how it contributes to production. So even your thought process towards doing work and getting the job done count, along with the actual physical labor. The next part is capital. Capital is kind of two things. Capital, one, it is things that are needed, for production of goods and services. Capital usually is referred to. Usually, people think of money, but capital is a lot of the times referring to machinery and infrastructure, things like that. So we call that real capital. So if you see the picture there of an assembly line of some kind of car, all the machines and all the robots and all that stuff, that is capital. And of course, the money that makes the venture go, that is also referred to as capital. Now, those are all things that you can touch. There are such things as intangible resources, so tangible versus intangible. Intangible is stuff that you cannot hold, cannot touch. So examples there: knowledge, entrepreneurship, and environment for enterprise. So knowledge, of course, is what you bring to the table in terms of what you know. Could be technical expertise, could be theoretical knowledge, could be academic knowledge, all those kinds of different things. Even the experience you bring to the table, as well as someone who's done the job for 30 years or something like that. You're bringing knowledge to the table through experience. Entrepreneurship is a person that is willing to change the way things work. Doesn't mean that they're starting their own business, although those are entrepreneurs as well. Sometimes it's innovation within a structure. So, for instance, Amazon, of course, is a giant company. They promote innovation through a lot of different incentives and disincentives to innovate, to keep your job, or to go up higher in that particular company. So innovations come from within, and entrepreneurship, usually people think of it's going out and doing your own business, but no, it can be something within a bigger business. Okay, so, and then the last one, of course, is creating the environment for business to occur. So that, in terms of, for instance, Canada is very politically and economically stable. That contributes a lot to being able to establish a business. So you imagine if you had to worry about the rule of law where you're setting up your business, that would not would not be a very good thing if you didn't know if the police could protect your property, or if somebody damaged something or cheated you or something like that. You lost money to them. You couldn't take them to court, and then the court be based on the legal system and rules each time would be the same. If they were different every time you went to court, that would be a disincentive to actually do business there. The other things, of course, would be what value the society you're in places on, the work you do or the amount of work that's done or how it's done. Work ethic is also part of that, can be part of that value system as well. Okay, moving to outputs. So there's goods and services. Goods are the tangible things that we produce, things that you can hold. Intangible things that you cannot hold. They are the service that we provide. So if you think of like a plumbing business could sell toilets, which is a physical good, but mostly plumbers sell their service, which is the fixing of your plumbing, your pipes, and your various faucets, all those kind of things. That's a service. Okay. Also, public versus private. Publicly owned, so that's government-owned businesses. In Canada, we usually refer to those as crown corporations. And then private are non-government-owned businesses, which make up the bulk. Okay, now we did earlier the economic problem, which was how to meet people's demands with scarce resources, meaning you have unlimited demands versus a limited amount of resources. The other part of the economic puzzle is how are you going to produce these things? Where are you going to produce them? What are you going to produce? And for whom are you going to produce them? So those choices have to be made for in production. And how are those decisions made go into the other part of the discussion here, and that's the economic systems. So as you can see, there's economic systems, mixed, traditional, command, and market. We'll start with the traditional. Traditional, you can think of as ones that, going back far enough before there was a constant currency, which means there wasn't a stable dollar or a coin or something like that. Like the Roman Empire, of course, had coinage with the emperor's face on it. So that was a stable currency. They had a system that things were worth a certain amount and the weights were all consistent. That's currency. Without that, you are reduced to, not reduced to, but you're using a barter system where the value of something goes up or down, basically dependent upon how well you can manage to make a deal. So we'll talk about the paperclip thing in a minute, but that's based on that kind of bartering system. Traditional societies could be just looking at it in terms of this is the way we've always done it, right? That's also a look at traditional systems. Okay, so in terms of that, and in terms of doing things the way we've always done them, so that means that there's very little movement among the social classes, making them static or rigid. Okay, so what to produce? That would be, what is the needs of the family? Who to produce? It's for everyone to produce their own. Surplus is then traded to other people for other needs beyond your own needs. And then how do we do it? We produce things using expertise that's passed down generation to generation. So you just think of more rural areas or the history of Canada, and you think of small towns and things like that, where the family who lives on a farm, for instance, they grow what they need. If they have more than what they need, then they'll trade it with somebody who doesn't have it, and then maybe from that trade they'll get some luxury goods or things that they need that they can't grow. Could be your cosmetic items or your hygiene items and things like that, or your entertainment items. And then how do we know how to do this stuff? Well, because the parents pass it down to their children, and the children pass it down to their children, and so on and so forth. So that's the idea of a traditional economy. And looking at, as I said, back to the red paperclip, if you haven't seen that or you don't know what that is, you should look it up. Very interesting, where a man who started with a red paperclip was able to make a series of trades, and he ended up with a house, which, when you think about it, he got a paperclip for a house is kind of ridiculous on the face of it. But again, what he was doing was he was taking advantage of the fact that somebody wanted what he had, and they had something they didn't really want, or they valued less than or equal to what he had. And so he was able to make a trade. So he wouldn't be able to make that trade with everybody, but he found people that were willing to trade him for what he had, for something he wanted. Okay, so next system is a command system, or command system. So this is where the decisions for what you're going to produce come down to a small group, sometimes one, sometimes just a small political group. Like as pictured, you have Stalin. They had in the Soviet Union, they had the Politburo, and they would be making decisions for the country's production. Okay, so that's the idea behind command economy. The command economy, the what what, for who, and how are all answered by the leaders, and they're all done in the name of the betterment of the state. Whether that's true or not, it's the way they interpret that. So, in modern times, you look at North Korea as an absolute example of a command economy. China is a command economy as well, but not as pure, not quite like that. But if you think about it, they built a hospital for the coronavirus or COVID-19. They built that in 10 days, and you can't do that without being able to direct all your resources to exactly where you want them to go. Right? You need quite a bit of command to be able to do that. So, okay, moving on. Market economy or market systems. The market system is free enterprise, private enterprise. This is the invisible hand of Adam Smith, right? So people act in their own self-interest, and through their self-interest, they create a market. So if they value something, they're going to pay more for it. If they don't value something, that particular item is going to go down in value. It's all based on what people want in that particular moment, and those things can change from day to day. Okay, so the what is dictated by consumer demand. How, profits are going to tell you how you're going to produce things. So if you make more money doing it a certain way, you're going to do it that way. And for whom, depends on whether you have the money or to buy whatever it is, whatever good it is. So market economies are not based on making things fair. They're based on settling demands based on the amount of resources people have. Okay, a mixed economy. So a lot of countries in the world are mixed economies. So it has bits and pieces of the different ones that we've looked at, including something called the underground economy. And the underground economy is just stuff that happens that's not part of any official statistics. So, for instance, underground economy could be something along the lines of illicit goods like drugs, weapons, and things like that. But it could also be something as simple as two tradespeople that are trading their talents to get a job done. So an electrician works along with someone who is a roofer, and they trade, their talents. The one person does the electrical work for someone's garage, while the other guy fixes the guy's roof. Right. So that's underground economy because it's not counted anywhere, but it does get work done, and it does add to the actual economy. Okay. So looking now at political economies. So we're looking at in terms of how economies match the needs of the people, and now we're going to look at the political movements behind those different systems. They're not a perfect match, as you can see by the diagram, right? Socialism, communism can both go under command economies because they require that the government controls a lot of the market, whereas socialism can also be part of democracy. It just depends on what decisions the people of that particular state want to make. Okay, so first one, communism. Okay, we're obviously not necessarily talking about, we're not talking about pure communism as professed by Engels and Marx, but basically, to have communism, you need a strong central government, and they make all the decisions, the economic decisions, for the betterment of the country. There are no private enterprises. There is no private ownership as well. Everything is owned and controlled by the state. Okay, and that is in again in the pure system. That is in the idea that everyone should be equal and there should be no different classes within society. Now, I'm not saying that works, but that's the idea behind it. Okay, the next one, socialism. Okay, so socialism has some similarities to communism in that the government again takes over centralized control over production. However, socialism does call for democratic pursuit of goals, meaning that people can direct the government to act in a certain certain manner or to invest in something. Whereas in a command economy, it is solely up to the people that have the power. Socialism is kind of, as I said, they're mixed, so it's kind of in between the two. Next one, capitalism. Okay, so capitalism is based upon a free government that keeps the market competition free and fair. Now, they do this by not interfering unless they absolutely have to, because private ownership is king in capitalism. It is the thing that makes it go. It is the idea that everybody wants to make as much money and get as much of profit and goods as they can. That's what runs capitalism. Okay, so the idea that, again, people are going to act within their own best interests and in their own selfish goals. That is behind the idea of capitalism, that profit is going to drive people to produce, and things that are being produced are things that are wanted. So they're going to be purchased or traded for, whatever it is. Okay. Next, the last one is fascism. So fascism is a different type of control on the economy. So fascist government has, again, an authoritarian and centralized power structure. So it's a very small group of people making decisions. But in difference from command economies, there's a lot more privatization within fascism. And there is also a free market. It's just that the free market and private enterprise is controlled much more heavily from the government's perspective. And the way they do it is they use force. So the whole concept behind fascism is through the credo of might makes right. So if I can force you to do something because I'm stronger than you, then it's okay, right? That's the way it's done, and there's nothing you can do about it because you can't stop me because you're not as powerful as me. Okay, so that's the idea behind fascism. So you can see how these different types of government and everything, they kind of intertwine the different ideas of how these economic decisions are made. And it's not just one government for one system. Multiple governments can have, a democratic system and have a different type of economy, or the different types of economy can have different outcomes. So, Canada is obviously a modern mixed economy, and so is the United States. But the United States is a much more of a free market economy than Canada is because of the different levels of government intervention. Okay, all right, that's it for that one. Hopefully, you learned something.